You're listening to The Dealmaker's Edge with A.Y. Strauss, diving deep into stories behind commercial real estate leaders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dealmaker's Edge. Today, we are really excited to be joined by my good friend, Dave Berg. He's a partner at Infinity Real Estate. Dave oversees the firm's acquisitions, investment ventures, and overall strategy, helping to grow their expanding portfolio. Since he joined in 2011, he's led the firm's expansion into Philly and Miami, playing a key role in transactions totaling over $750 million with a background in investment banking and real estate. His expertise spans acquisitions, capital transactions, and large-scale development projects. Beyond his work, he's an active leader in the Miami Beach development community. We're really excited to have him on in this conversation. We're going to talk about some of their development projects, the nuances, life as a developer, finding that critical balance, and overall state of the market and his deal flow. So here we are with my good friend Dave Berg. We go way back, and I'm really excited you made the time to be on to really educate all of our listeners. You've got a tremendous career to date. We're going to learn about your background, about your deal flow, and what makes you tick and what makes Infinity tick. And just want to thank you for being on. And Dave, maybe you can kick us off with some of the earlier career points, where you went to school, where you grew up, and then sort of how you got started in the industry.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I grew up in Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia, where I became a diehard Philly sports fan. And I still, to this day, will watch almost every Sixers, Flyers, and definitely every Eagles game. So for all the listeners, you do not want to attend a Philly sports game with me. I'm one of the obnoxious Philly fans that you all read and hear about. After growing up in Philadelphia, I went to school at Emory University in Atlanta. My family my mother grew up in Atlanta. She's actually a Cuban Jew. So she's a Cuban that made her way to Miami and then eventually Atlanta. And so I had cousins that went to Emory that were from Atlanta and grandparents that lived in Atlanta when I went to Emory. After school, I moved to New York, where I spent nearly 15 years in New York City, living throughout the city, Greenwich Village, East Village, Midtown, working out of school in actually the CMBS market right before the 2008 crisis, where it tanked the whole market. And then shortly after, starting in CMBS, moved to investment banking at RBC Capital Markets. That wasn't for me. After about a little over a year and a half stint in investment banking, moved on to the buy side of real estate.
And I think you were at Monday before you joined Infinity. So you worked with a couple other large groups before you found your permanent home, as it were. Yeah,
that's right. After RBC Capital Markets, I went to work for two brothers, Edward and Yuri Mermelstein, and it was called Mermelstein Development at the time. Yuri's been fairly active the last 5 years. He's a great friend and a mentor. At the time, it was really still the heart of the recession. 2010, I think, and 2009, 2010, and his position in the market was that there was going to be a double dip, so we were pretty inactive at the time. And I think he actually started focusing a lot of his attention and time on the diamond industry, because the diamond industry was, 70% distressed at the time. And so me being young and inexperienced and less entrepreneurial, I was like, I want to do real estate. So, and my boss is focusing on diamonds, so I got to get out of here. Meanwhile, if I had invested alongside him in the diamond industry, I would probably much better off. And so I went to Monday Properties and oversaw the DC North Arlington office portfolio for them for a little while. Lehman Brothers at the time as well had hired Monday Properties to asset manage what was called the B3 portfolio, which was a portfolio of assets in San Fran, LA, Boston, and DC that Lehman Brothers, when they were kind of winding down their assets, had owned, and Monday was asset managing. And then also worked on some iconic properties with Monday, 230 Park and the recapitalization of that building, which was a well over $1 billion transaction, and then some Midtown South buildings as well. But ultimately found my way to Infinity. It was a little more of an entrepreneurial environment, back to a smaller team and various different asset classes. At the time, Monday was focused strictly on Class A office. And so I wanted to get more exposure to multifamily and retail, and Infinity, offered me that opportunity.
Very well said. And I think that's when we first met, when you were at Infinity. And I know, you and your colleagues have awesome chemistry and have done some tremendous deals. And beyond that, you've also touched hospitality, retail, multi. So you're seeing the full gamut, and they have a great track record. Combined, you guys have a beautiful track record. And maybe we could talk about some of the earlier years at Infinity, because I think you started, right coming out of the GFC. It was like 2011 or so. So the market wasn't crashing, but it was also very challenged, right? But there was a lot of value creation in those coming years. Maybe talk about those earlier years at Infinity. Do you see some similarities maybe today to some of those earlier years when you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. Steve started the company in 2005, and it was primarily a retail-focused company, shopping centers across the country, invested alongside partners, mostly grocery-anchored shopping centers. He started focusing a little more on urban real estate in maybe 2008, 2009, when he did the hotel on 26th Street and some retail in New York City. And then about a year before I joined, ATN, who was his partner on the hotel on 26th Street, the first large transaction that Infinity had done. ATN was at City Property Investors, and he was the LP on that deal. He left City to join Steve and form a separate entity under the Infinity Group. At the time it was called Infinity Group, and under the Infinity Group, an umbrella, which was Infinity Urban Century. And that umbrella, that separate entity was really focused on urban multifamily investing in primarily Washington, D.C. And so I think part of the reason that I joined Infinity and part of the reason why they wanted to bring me on was because I had some DC experience and North Arlington, Virginia experience. So I was already familiar with that submarket and some of the players, having been at Monday. And a lot of the growth that the company was exploring was Northwest DC. So when I first joined, the business plan was to really rapidly expand on workforce housing and pre-war buildings in DC. We accumulated dozens of properties between 2010 and 2013 in the district. And aside from that platform, our focus was heavily driving more urban investing in outside of multifamily. It was in the retail sector. So quite a bit of properties in New York and Brooklyn and Queens. We did some urban investing in Boston. And then really towards 2013, 14, 15, that's when we started investing in Philadelphia and Miami. And those additional markets, every market we've expanded in comes from a place of really either homegrown or local based or family oriented experience and knowledge of the submarket. So having a ton of family in the Miami market and having traveled to Miami Beach, half a dozen times a year for most of my life, I was very familiar with the Miami market and felt comfortable with a lot of the players and the architects and the contractors and the other developers and owners down here to develop a network to feel confident in our investing down here, especially with the locational know-how. And the same thing about Philadelphia. Growing up in Philadelphia, having lived there my entire life, knowing the submarkets and the pockets and where to focus our time and attention, and also having a really deep base of a network there, so that when we enter a market, we're not paying what we call the dumb tax, which is every time you enter a new market, you end up meeting all the wrong people and then eventually finding your way to the right people. So that's really how we expand into each and every market. ATN, of course, being instrumental in the DC expansion. Steve and his family having a really deep and embedded network in New York, which helped us grow that platform. And then Miami and Philly followed with my network.
And certainly way Miami's gone, and you moved down there. What year did you actually make the formal move down?
I moved down in 2020. So it was the heart of COVID. We had purchased, at the time it was called the Clay Hotel, and it was a 2.5-star to 3-star, basically hostel on Espanola Way. It encumbered the entire Espanola Way block on the south side. So it was, 500 feet of frontage of pedestrian-only traffic, and it encompasses 9 buildings. So it was just such a great assemblage to purchase. And we purchased it from a horse breeder out of Ocala, Florida, who was at the time in his 80s. And he bought the property for next to nothing in 1980 or 1982 or something like that. And we just felt it was a tremendous opportunity to assemble such a large piece of real estate and own a real piece of Miami Beach, because how else are you going to accumulate 2 blocks of contiguous real estate across 9 buildings, right across from Ocean Drive and the Lowe's and really in the heart of South Beach. So when we bought that, it was a cash flowing machine, and it was kind of the thought process was, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hurricane Irma came through in 2018, I think 17 or 18, and really caused some significant damage to the building, which we had already received historic preservation approval, and we'd already teed up a renovation program to renovate this hotel from a 3-star hostel into a 4-star quality boutique hotel. We just had not hit go on it because it was cash flowing and performing. When the hurricane came through, I think it was October 17, it really forced our hand to start work on around June, July of 2018. And so we were really towards the later stages of finishing up the project when COVID hit. And so we're constantly on these Zooms in April, May of 2020 when no one could leave their homes. And we're talking to our team, and this is a very large renovation for us. It's a $45 million renovation program. And we're on the call and we're discussing the project, and I'm looking around and I'm saying, when was the last time anyone saw this project? Because we're all New York developers developing in Miami. And just dead silence, and it's like crickets, and everyone's like, well, February. And I said, well, that's not great. So since we weren't in the office, I flew down with my family in May or June of 2020 with the intention of being in Miami for 6 months to finish the project. Funny story is that I ended up calling my partner Steve probably August, September of that year, very shortly after I moved down, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and I said, hey, we're catching up on a lot of business. And I said, hey, by the way, I think I'm going to buy a house down here, and I'm probably not coming back to New York. What do you think about that? And it's just dead silence, crickets on the phone for, a very long period of time, like 15 to 20 seconds. And I won't curse on the podcast, but he says silence, and then out of nowhere, what the hell is going on in this world? Basically, because he's dealing with COVID and we're dealing with all this triage we're in. And he was just shocked that oh my God, I'm moving to, Miami, after 60 days of a temporary move. We all realized it was really the best thing for us because we've done a ton of expansion in the Miami market. We have New York covered with ATN and Steve, living there and being there. And now we've opened up a Miami office. We moved down employees down here, and it's really been, we've really planted our flag in Miami Beach and become a part of the community, and have done dozens of deals down here since that because of the local presence.
Outstanding. And the timing was fantastic. I mean, think about COVID and what it did for that market and how it opened up, and, just looking back, very fortuitous, but you're lucky to have that very, very strong, solid foundational partnership as well. And I'm glad everything worked out. And I know with respect to that project, you've also done a lot of work with the city. I mean, you've created this Espanola Way Association, and you're the VP of it, and you're a board member of the Washington Avenue BID, the South Beach Business Improvement District. So you've really had to enmesh in these very kind of public municipal roles to enhance the community because you're ambassador for your own project. But it speaks to the difference between saying, I'm going to buy a cash flowing building to I'm actually going to create a community and work with the city and make it vibrant and add value to everybody else. That's not all easy to accomplish. So congrats on continuing to do those types of transformative projects.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very critical part of our business. We've done 40 historic redevelopments. And so when you're doing surgery to historic buildings, there's a ton of sensitivity to it, not just from preservation standpoint and the boards, that historic preservation boards that you go in front of, but also the community that surrounds it, and ensuring that you're building within the character of what was initially envisioned by the original architect and developer, and keeping in character in line with the community. So it's been a significant ground game for us, always engaging in with the local activists and community members, always engaging with the political parties to ensure that we're being socially responsible in our development. And it's been really the driving force that's allowed us to continue to grow our platform and our portfolio in a responsible manner with the support of the community. I'll give you an example. Our project in West Philadelphia and University City Garden Court Towers, which we just finished in December. That building was a 13-story historic property, and it came with a 52,000 square foot piece of land that in the 20s, the original architect had envisioned building two 13-story towers, but the Great Depression hit, and he only got one off the ground before he was unable to do it and finance the second one. So he built a parking garage at the ground level that was supposed to satisfy two towers. It was 270 parking spaces. And then for basically 80, 90 years, the garage had a green roof with a pond because nothing could be developed on it. And since then, zoning changed and the area was downzoned, so there was no more ability to build any more residential housing here. We bought that property in July of 19 after the prior developer was unable to get a approval to build a residential housing. They went out to the community, they went out to the politicians, and they got rejected. In July of 19, we purchased the property. Throughout the second and early third quarter of 2019, we met with all the community RCOs, the residential community organizations, garnered support, met with the councilwoman of the area, and by December we had approved for a 220 unit project. So our intentions of recreating the past, our intentions of preserving and paying homage and showing respect to the historic building, as opposed to a new construction looking building with a ton of glass. We built out a replica of the brick as close as we could get to the historic tower. So it looks like it's always been there. In addition, we created a central lobby that connects the buildings, so they're all one asset now, as opposed to having this new construction component next to the historic tower. So I think that's been a part of our DNA and our approach that's helped us be successful.
And that certainly helps you win deals too, when you have to engage municipalities and you have to show up with that track record and preserving the look and feel and the vibrancy and enhancing the community. You guys have a great reputation for that. And it's certainly a higher level of development than, here's a parcel, I got approvals to build this out of the ground. It's much more complex to deal with what's there and what could and has been blended together. Maybe we'll jump a little bit. When we were speaking a couple weeks back, you have a lot of roots in Philly. You're doing a Philly project. You've done deals in a bunch of different states, but a lot of talk about New York, where maybe now some opportunities are presenting themselves. Maybe you could talk about what you see in New York now, what's exciting for you to sort of dig into some acquisitions there, and what are you looking forward to accomplishing there in the next several years?
New York was always our primary market in terms of deal volume of number of transactions. That felt like it was always our highest volume market. We really haven't bought anything in New York since probably 2015-16. We became a lender in that market because around that time, we started coming in at 70, 80 cents on the dollar for every transaction we bid on. And we were seeing in our own portfolio, which was relatively sizable at the time, expenses outpacing income growth across the board. It didn't matter what asset type it was. If it was retail condo, the taxes were creeping up significantly with the tax treatment, and if it was office, it was payroll and union payroll, or if it was residential, maybe the same or different local 11 or operating expenses that were coming down the pipeline you had to do your building. So we essentially that's what really started our lending platform. We started lending on deals in New York and realizing that we still liked the market, we still liked the collateral, but the risk reward proposition just wasn't there for us on the equity side. And so it wasn't until December of 2024 where we actually re-entered the market on the equity side. So it's pretty significant 7, 8, 9 year pause for us on buying there. We did transactions in New York, primarily on the pref or the senior debt side, but not on the common equity. So we're excited to be re-entering that market. We think the dynamics have changed quite a bit. There's a lot of liquidity that's flowed out of New York. So in some ways, and almost in a funny way, it's like a contrarian approach to be investing in the best city in the world. But there's a lot of liquidity that's flowed out of New York because of the rent laws that passed in 2019, because of where the office component is, because of hotel unions, because of the combination of the retail apocalypse that occurred in 2017, 18, followed by COVID. And so a lot of capital has flowed to secondary markets, the Smile states, the Sunbelt states, and we're finding opportunity in re-entering New York primarily on the retail side.
Great. And I'm sure you'll pick up some real gems. I think as the market improves, you guys understand retail better than anyone. And that is your backyard. So it'll be fun to watch you pick up some projects there as well and continue to develop what you have going on. Let me switch gears as well. We call the podcast The Dealmaker's Edge, and we always try to hit slightly on the mental health side of the business because it's very stressful. And it almost sounds easy the way you're describing it. I know there's enormous work and enormous risk and enormous capital deployed and enormous talent. But when you're managing development, when you're managing real estate deals, you're dealing with investors' money, your own money. It's stressful, very stressful. So how do you kind of manage that voice in your head, as it were? What do you keep telling yourself when you hit a roadblock, hit a bump, have that bad day, week, or month? Obviously, you're a young guy, you've been in it for a long time, you will continue to, but managing the mindset is a big part of deal making. And maybe you could talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit to touch on there. So first off, we have a annual Infinity board meeting, which is basically a sounding board for a 2-day offsite with people that are not involved in our organization. People that are highly intelligent, very successful in their careers, have been doing this a long time. One of the board members is based in London, another board member based in California, another one based in Boston. So really different perspectives, trying to get outside of our foxhole and get perspective from people. I think that's very helpful from a strategy perspective and a macro perspective of how we look at our business. And it's almost like an annual reset that is highly creative to, keeping us focused and getting outside of the minutia of the day-to-day business. I've, great partners and colleagues at our company. Infinity, the average tenure of our team is probably 10 plus years. And so there's a ton of collaboration within our team. And it's not just, the day-to-day workload, but it's really strategic thinking. We take a lot of pauses, on a whiteboard or in a conference room and just throw out ideas. We constantly reevaluate our thesis. Oftentimes it changes, and it can change in a given year. What may have been the approach 6 to 9 months ago, maybe some dynamics changed, and we want to shift that a bit. And that's the benefit of being at an entrepreneurial shop like Infinity, whereby we can shift gears and change our investment thesis. And, we were thinking about doing common equity here. Now let's think about debt. We looked at deals as a common equity buyer and said, you know what, I have a great group for this. Let us be the pref for this group, or let us be the debt, because it's just, the workload for that deal isn't worth the resource drag. It's not that it's a bad deal by any means. And on those deals, everyone's done successful and done great for their risk reward proposition. Just a function of managing the resources and the time and attention that certain things take. So we're constantly evaluating that, and we have a great sounding board. Steve and I talk probably 3 times a day, mostly early in the morning or late in the evening, so that we're dividing and conquering, but always checking each other on the strategic thinking. And then for me personally, I would say, very critical for my mental health and keeping focus and staying on top of things is sports. I play sports hours upon hours a week, and it's not necessarily during business hours, but Saturday mornings I have a weekly soccer game with same 8 guys every single Saturday. Tuesdays and sometimes Thursday nights I'll play hockey at 10 o'clock at night. Other times we'll play. There's padel and paddle tennis has become very popular. So you'll play early in the morning or play at night. But these are 2-hour blocks, hour and a half blocks where the phone is completely, off or not. You're not focused on it. I won't look at it in between breaks, especially in hockey. Forget about it. If you're thinking about something else, you might get your head taken off. And these are really important for me, at least, to have these mental breaks, to focus on my mental health, to disconnect, to collaborate, to have conversation with people that I don't work with on different topics in the world, or, families or things that just aren't work related. And that's important. Also, we're not observant, but really embracing the traditions of Shabbat, Friday nights, coming home, focusing on your family, really focusing on family time and the kids on Saturdays and Sundays are a great reset for me. I tend to always have to find a few hours a weekend to work a little bit, but for the most part, we're high attention to the kids and the family, and always prioritizing that for 2 days, 2.5 days a week has also been, really helpful for me to just be awarded the privilege and the opportunity for my family to focus on work Monday through Friday with, during business hours without a ton of interruption, and still, feel that I'm getting the connection and the time in with my family that like is important to me.
Well said. I think that's a struggle that people of our generation struggle with as well all the time. You may experience some success, and you've experienced a ton of success. May you continue to experience that success, but you do need to have pieces of your life that are completely disentangled, unobstructed by work. And whether that's the family space, sports space, whatever you need to do, but it creates a holistic person, which lets you show up stronger to your partners and your investors and your deals and everything else. Dave, I won't keep you. I could talk to you all day, but I love the insights you've shared. I love what you've done. I really respect you and your partners, brand you've built, the reputation that you've developed.
Thank you.
I guess on that note, we'll wrap here. But Dave, you're doing fabulous. I'm really glad to get your story out.
Thank you so much for having me.
And gonna watch your career very closely, my friend. So thanks for being on today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining the Dealmaker's Edge. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And please give us a 5-star rating so more people can follow the conversation.